that could quickly that could quickly adapt to that. So, all right, whew, I feel like I've been talking and talking and talking. Son, are you there? We're going to do a little back and forth, I believe. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right, Michael. So firstly, yeah, welcome to virtual South Africa. Hopefully we can get you here when we can all start moving around again. It's still quite difficult for South Africans to leave the country. I've heard of people having to go via Kenya just so that they can get into the UK without staying in a Hilton hotel at Heathrow. So but thanks for your talk, and to all the viewers, everyone that tuned in. It's great to see you again. It's been a while since I've been on InsureTalk. I actually before I get into the questions, I came across Michael's book because as a leader in our business, I was kind of feeling, it was easy. Well, I'm not gonna say easy, but it was easy to go into lockdown and to start remote working when we didn't have a choice. We were kind of like you said, the street fight. You're in it, and you just got to start throwing punches, or you could run away, I guess. But if you're in a corner, you've got to you actually have to engage with this thing. So we didn't have an option. We had to keep going, and that was almost easier than where we're finding ourselves now, because now we have to make a choice. We know that the lockdown restrictions are easing in most countries, so for me as a leader, I was kind of going, well, what do we do next? Do we kind of go back to the way we were? And so I remember Googling. I don't think I typed in leading in the next normal, but I came across your book, and I downloaded it, read it, bought it for my team. And those 12 principles have really sort of made a difference. So when you agreed to come on to InsureTalk, I thought, and I must tell you, Michael, I've got my team watching your website now, and lots of people from Joburg are downloading your book at the moment. So I think what you're saying is actually resonating. There's a little ticker thing that pops up every time somebody downloads it. So yeah, the kind of the sort of things that have jumped out for me. So now we're kind of going, do we carry on working from home, or do we go back to the office? So we kind of, you mentioned in your talk now, you said leaders are burnt out, our teams are burnt out, and I think that one of the things that I felt myself doing is kind of going, okay, my guys are burning out. I need to get them back into the office. Is that the right reaction? Or do you think we'd be kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a funny thing, Simon. And almost everybody I talk to are going to make changes. I mean, almost because there are benefits to working at home. No commute, connected with your family. In a way, you're more productive sometimes. And so, to me, there's like working from home all the time and working from the office. And I think there's a sweet spot in there for 95% of companies that's some sort of hybrid. And because it's really hard, I think, nowadays to do too much either way. Because when you do have a virtual team, you can hire much better talent because you're not geographically, you don't have the geographic issues. You have people with different life situations, et cetera. And then also when you're virtual, you have to spend a lot of time getting around the no FaceTime type thing, which you can do, but it's very intentional, and it takes a lot of effort to do that. So and all the studies have said is people like working from home. They really have now that they got a taste of it, because a lot of people obviously were forced to do it. Pretty much everybody is forced to do it, when traditionally we said we couldn't do it, or it wouldn't work for our company, or it wouldn't. It's like, oh yeah, it will work for us. And so people want, and I'm going to use the word hybrid, there's going to be a lot of hybrid solutions. And the thing is, I'm not even sure we can, because we don't know if there's going to be more lockdowns. We don't know if there's going to be more whatever there is. So I don't even think it's time for that long-term strategy. But I think it's time for the medium-term strategy, say over the next 3 months, over the next 6 months, because people want to get their head around things, and we have to be more creative. So I know this isn't super specific, but I think a lot of people are going to land in the middle. And I think even if people go very virtual and say a lot of people can work it from home, I think that's going to actually lend itself to more like team building sizes, because if I do have a fully virtual team, say they're all in the same country, I do want to get them together at least every quarter to spend a day together, just gaining that trust, just seeing them. So I do, and again, I think that's where the creativity comes in, where you got to work, you got to almost figure out what's going to work for you, your workforce. What do they want? What are they requiring? There's technical challenges, et cetera, if you have a call center, et cetera, and then work backwards from that, because we can always find solutions. But I just encourage everybody that if you are somebody that always worked at an office and all of a sudden you're fully virtual because of lockdown or whatever, and you really want to get back to the office, yeah, you can get back to the office. Just realize that there may be a sweet spot in there just to really open up your thinking, to really see what's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, thanks. And I think on that note, it working for everybody. One of the things you talk about in your book is that distinction. You mentioned specifically introverts and extroverts. Getting to know who they are. I think a lot of people don't really understand the definitions properly. But knowing who they are and then kind of figuring out how the virtual thing might be working or not working for them. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. That's a great thing to bring up, because it's something very something everybody can use right away. And when I talk about this, people are probably going to go, "Oh yeah, I sort of know that, but let's take it to the next level and really make sure everybody's implementing it." And really quick, Simon, how long are we going to go? Because I can do long answers or short answers. How much more time do we have again?
I think we've got a good sort of 20 minutes left, so we're good.
So a lot of people know, but I'm just going to go over the definitions. You have extroverts, which love being around people, love talking, love crowds. And the actual definition of an extrovert are people that get energized by being around people. And when they're alone too much, they get that drains their energy. And then you have introverts who really love being alone. They love reading, maybe they love writing, those type of things. Sometimes they're very analytical, and they recharge by being alone, and being around a lot of people draws their energy. So, and funny thing is, a lot of professional speakers are a bit introverted. So it's not even how do they think, it's how do they gain their energy. Most everybody is in the middle. There's not many pure extroverts or introverts, but normally people are on the middle. And so, but it's where are they at on there? And a lot of salespeople, for example, are extroverted. Now, when it comes to working from home or working virtually, the extroverts, the farther people are on the extrovert scale, the more difficult this has been for them, because they miss that camaraderie of the office. And what you want to do with extroverts is recognize your extroverts and make sure that they have an outlet for their talking, their energy. Especially if they're used to chatting a lot, and that might be as simple as maybe doing a daily coffee for half an hour or an hour, just for anybody who wants to pop in to just chat about things. Or you might make sure that everybody has a buddy that they check in with, especially on the extroverted side, once a day, just to chat with people, because that will really affect their mental health. Introverts, on the other hand, they're really thriving working from home, because they're getting all their stuff done. They're like, nobody's there to bug me because I'm at the office, everybody talks to me, and I'm a bit introverted, a little bit introverted, and so I get this. And it's funny because my wife is extroverted, so she doesn't have anybody to talk to, so she'll start talking to me, and it's like, we're trying to figure each other out here. So you really, the people in your household, this even affects people in your household. And so, but introverts, though, oftentimes they'll get forgotten about. And so you as a leader, you might have this introvert and you're like, hey, Simon's getting all this stuff done. He's amazing. But then I don't talk to him for 3 weeks. And then I find, I'm getting emails at weird times from him. Because what you need to do is you need to make sure you're checking in with those introverts. You need to be having one-on-ones with your meeting, with your team, probably every 2 weeks. And this can be a 10-minute check-in. Hey, Simon, how you doing, man? How's things? Listen to him. Again, I go through in the course, I go through how to spot mental health issues proactively, and because you really want to have your antennas up for these to get them, because the quicker you get them, the quicker you can address them. So the introverts, you don't want them to be forgotten about, and you want to make sure you're supporting them. And there's different ways to do that. The extroverts, you want to make sure there's an outlet for their energy. And again, extroverts love talking to other extroverts. So you can literally tell two extroverts just talk to each other at 10 a.m. every day, and just to burn off that extra energy.
Yeah, bring in the extroverts.
Yeah, I'm gonna go hide personally. You guys talk.
Yeah.
That's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, Michael, we got a question here from Cliff in the audience, and he says, how do you get to know more about the personal life of your employees or your team without appearing to be nosy? And I guess, you know, when you've got a bigger team, you may not have had personal relationships with everybody before lockdown, and you quite possibly don't have, you know, technology that you can rely on to measure productivity. So, you know, to try and, you know, balance, you know, not putting people under pressure, not making them feel like they're being micromanaged, but at the same time, you know, feeling like you've got some control over your business still. Any suggestions around that?
Yeah, great question, Simon. And for everybody, this comes up a lot because, first of all, trust your intuition. If your intuition is telling you something's going on with them that's not, you can tell they're falling off a little bit, that's probably accurate. And you again, you really need to be setting up these one-on-ones, and that's what's great about these consistent one-on-ones. And in these one-on-ones, you really have to listen and show empathy, and really give them this safe place to share. And again, in the course, I have literally a step-by-step outline of how to run these one-on-ones, because there's a lot of psychology to this. How do you create a safe space? How do you get them talking? How do you share vulnerably? Because sometimes one tactic is for you to share something about yourself. And there's ways to ask these questions out of like a curiosity instead of in a really supportive way, because and even asking these questions are going to let them know that you care about them. Because, you know, I have one, this guy was a managing director, and he's really busting his butt to do everything for his employees. And I said, well, how are you doing? He's like, well, actually, I'm leaving. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I was going through a tough time. And then I went to the owner, and the owner could tell I was going through a tough time. And then, because finally I told him, look, I'm taking 2 weeks off. I need to recharge, or a week off. I need to recharge. The owner said, okay, yeah, you can do that. And the MD said, when he came back, the owner didn't even ask me how I'm doing. And he's like, all I wanted him to do was just show some care. Just say, hey, you feeling better, man? I know you were going through a tough time. I appreciate that. That was all the guy was looking for. That's all the guy was looking for. He didn't get any of that. It was all about making money for the owner. He's like, look, I'm not going to deal with this. You know, I do a good job. I'm going to go do a good job for somebody that cares. And so there's a lot about empathy. And I give a story in the book about, about it. I don't want to get too far into that, but that's what I mean. Care about the person, have real conversations, share some real things about you. But when you share about you, this is sort of what I talked about before, that you have to be vulnerable in the correct way, because being vulnerable, there's so much to vulnerability and authenticity and leadership. Being vulnerable doesn't mean puking all your problems over your team, because then they're going to get freaked out. Being vulnerable means, hey, you know, yesterday I went through a bit of a tough time, so I took a half day off. Because when you say that, then you tell them it's okay for them to not be perfect all the time. It's okay for them to take a mental half day off, right? Because they're just, you know, they're burnt out or whatever. But you don't ever want to be in that downtime again when you talk to them, because that energy transfers. So your authenticity, you can talk about something that happened, but you don't ever want to show up with that energy. But though by talking about it, you make it okay for them, because they're going to mirror what you do and what you say. And so that really is important.
Thank you. Another question here, cameras on or off?
So it's interesting. I was always like a camera on guy. And then I read a post, and people talked about a couple things. One is, look, if it's a tight knit group, like if we're in a management meeting and it's me and 4 or 5 people, we're doing a half an hour to an hour, maybe even 2 hours, but it's like really important stuff. Cameras on. Look, we're in a management team. You need to put your camera on if you're in my management team. If it's 20 people, if it's 30 people, if it's a weekly meeting where people are only need to be engaged part of it, because look, we do weekly status, maybe project teams where I got 4 different projects going on and people are in different teams. Keep your cams off. drink your coffee, go to the bathroom, make a bagel, whatever it is, just be present when you're present. And also culturally, it's different. I realize that some cultures are, American. It's like, hey, put us in front of a camera, no problem. A lot of us, but some people, are shy. They don't like the camera. So don't get too caught up in this camera on, camera off, because it's more about your insecurity, honestly, as the presenter. Because and I get it. Trust me, I love presenting to live groups, and I'm looking at my camera. I'm trying to like look at Simon out of this thing. I'm looking at the camera, trying to keep my energy up. And even when Simon like smiles and stuff, I get that. But and I understand that you want that real time feedback. But at the end of the day, it's forcing people to put their cameras on are going to be, it's a little bit annoying, because they're like, look, I just want to sit back, and if I'm not in frame, or my cat comes in, or my kid's having an issue, I really don't want that on camera, because that's a lot of what we're dealing with. So it's a bit situational, but give people a little more of a break. And if you do need that feedback, talk to 2 or 3 of your close friends in the group and say, hey, do me a favor, keep your camera on and just give me some thumbs up, or some things. And what I do, I teach these 2-hour-long leadership masterminds, and every so often I'll say, hey, does this make sense? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. And it's just nice for me to get that thing that they can still hear me, that I'm still on the right track, because we don't know. And look, it's hard doing meetings with these cameras, but again, it's just a way for you to really up your game.
Yeah, no, that's valid. I mean, try doing comedy on virtual. It's just little crickets chirping in the background. But I think one of the questions that came up in our business, and I see somebody's just asked something connected to that on the group. It's about culture, and you do deal with it in your book, culture, and being able to create sort of deep connections in this virtual space. So now we do have, as you mentioned, we've got the option to have get-togethers. People can go back to the office if they feel safe enough to do that. But if we are working almost completely online, how do you still create those deep connections with people? What do those one-on-ones look like? How do you make sure the company culture is still kind of flowing when people aren't kind of getting back together?
Yeah, I get that. I get that. To me, there's 2 things I'm going to answer here. One is, how do you do the deep connections, and second is culture. The first about connections, it's like, now that we're virtual, we have to be intentional about everything that happened by accident, because no matter what happens, Simon and I are not going to meet at the coffee, at the coffee thing, or go to lunch when we're working virtual. So you have to allow for that. And what that might look like is, every Friday, I have a different, I have a half an hour virtual coffee with some random person in the organization, or from, if I'm in sales, it's maybe with somebody in marketing or finance or whatever it is, so that we can have those water cooler conversations, and they work out surprisingly well. You just have to put those in people's calendar, or make a way for those to happen. And you know what? I was in London before that. I was in San Diego, near Los Angeles. So everybody would want to meet for a coffee. I'm like, well, if I meet you for a coffee, that's a 4-hour freaking thing. It's not like meeting for a coffee is easy. So I'm like, let's do a virtual coffee. And people are like, oh, I need face-to-face. But the fact is, I like virtual coffees better. I like 25-minute virtual coffees better than meeting in person, because, to be honest, half the people I don't really like that much. No, I'm just joking. But I'm not like committed to like an hour coffee, because it seems like when you meet for a coffee, you're always committed to a 45-minute conversation. It always starts out here. How's the weather? How's your van? When you have a 25-minute virtual coffee, it's literally half an hour out of your day. You get right to the stuff more quicker. There's less fluff. I do care a little if you have kids or not, but what I more care is if we can do business together. And that's not a problem. People are like, oh, I like these relationships. I like relationships with people I can do business with. So let's find out if we're a match business wise, and then work outwards from there. Let's work on the connection first.
Good. Michael, when we chatted last week for the first time, and you said something really interesting to me, and I'll just bring everyone into the picture here. What I said to Michael when we chatted was, we had just had a meeting at our office, and we were really going through some of the more creative things in the business, looking at our purpose statement, Why are we here? Those are the kind of questions, dealing with some of the marketing things and leadership generally. And we got together for that meeting. I flew up to Johannesburg and we had a face-to-face, and it felt like we were able to kind of create something. Took the whole day. Then I mentioned this to you, and you said to me, you don't believe that people can be creative in a group like that. And in fact, when you do things virtually, there might even be a better way of coming up with creative things, marketing ideas, purpose statements, whatever it is. Do you remember that conversation and what you said to me?
Yes, Simon, this is a cool thing to bring up. And let me give everybody context before everybody says you don't believe in collaboration, because collaboration is amazing in certain areas, but they found, Harvard did some great studies that when it comes to creativity, when you're in a group, that stifles creativity. And so creativity, because I'll tell you what, say Michelangelo, when he was going to paint the Sistine Chapel, he got his 5 buddies together. He's like, I want to do this one person pointing to this other person. They're like, that's not going to look good. Maybe we should just do something standard. Or, when Steve Jobs had the idea for the iPod, like, we're going to make a Walkman, but we're going to put more things on it, and everybody's more songs, everything like that. That's stupid, right? They say back when you had horse-drawn carriages, if you asked people what they wanted, nobody would say a car. They would say better horse-drawn carriages. So when it comes to being really, truly creative and looking for something out of the box, when you have more people in it, people play it safe, because true creativity, genius creativity, comes from one person's vision. And so collaboration works great when you got to make sure that, like, finance and sales got to work together. You want to collaborate on that action plan. You definitely want divisions and people from different areas to collaborate, for sure. And that's, people work too siloed, absolutely. But when it comes to being innovative, here's the one thing I gave to Simon that I think makes a lot of sense. If I was having a thing like, hey, we need a new product, or we need a new tagline for this, the worst thing to do is get everybody together, because then we get the most boring things, because nobody wants to take a chance. So what I'm going to say is, to me and to Simon and to everybody else, I want you to think of your 3 best taglines. I want you to bring them to the meeting, and then we're all going to throw them on a board. And what that's going to do is everybody's individual creativity and risk taking is going to be at play. And then you get all of them. And then you got to be careful not to talk yourself out of something a bit gutsy. And that way you get the best of both worlds, because obviously you don't want to just leave it to somebody and hope it works. You do want more people in it, but that's a really good way to get people creative. That's what we were talking about, right, Simon?
Yeah, that is, and I think we're going to try this in our business. I'm not 100% convinced that it'll work, but I think it's certainly worth a shot. The other thing that's come up in the chats is, virtual doesn't seem to work that well for onboarding, especially new people in the business. But if you're a broker and you're in sales, doing a virtual meeting the first time you meet someone, or the first time they get brought into the business, there's a bit of, does that work? Am I on the same footing that I was on before the pandemic? What do you think about that? I think, sorry, Michael, before you answer, with the employees, one of the things that people have been saying, you learn a lot from eavesdropping when you're in an open plan office, and you obviously don't get that in virtual. So yeah, sorry to interrupt. Back to you.
Well, let's handle all these, because again, you brought up a couple of things. One, learning from other people, eavesdropping. 2 is onboarding. The 3rd is culture. And again, each one of these things that happen by accident in the office, you have to be intentional about. And I make the case, when you're intentional about them, you do them better, but you just have to put effort into them. So let's talk about eavesdropping. And this is something we chatted about. So, if I'm a junior programmer, I hang out with the senior programmers, I hear them solving each other's issues, then I learn from what they're doing. Well, why don't, like, once every 2 weeks, you have a best practices session where for an hour, all the junior programmers join a senior programmer. He talks about something that he did, or she talks about something she did, and everybody else can learn from what she did. And you do the mentoring sessions that way. And you're getting the exact same, not the exact same thing, but you're making it intentional. And so that's, for example, you're eavesdropping, or what a lot of people have done have set up mentors. So, Simon's my mentor, so we're supposed to talk half an hour every week. That works really well, so that I have somebody to go to, or he can check over something, et cetera, on that. So that's one quick thing. And that's not even being intentional, putting in a system around anything that we want to do. Onboarding. So most people are not great on onboarding anyway, but it's more important virtually. And the fact is, you really should, again, create times and create spaces for people to connect with other people in the organization. So if I'm new, Simon should have like my first 3 days planned out. I should spend, and we talk about culture. I talk to people that are like, well, what is your culture? Well, sort of this and sort of that. Well, if you haven't defined your culture, how can people adapt to your culture? And so when you do your meetings, what do you do for culture in every meeting? Oh, we really don't do anything. Well, you've got some work to do. So when it comes to onboarding, you really have to plan out, hey, if it's important for me to create a connection with Simon, then we should have a half an hour conversation every 2 days for 2 weeks. And again, I'm a big believer in the short, frequent conversations or meetings. I like 10-minute check-ins. I like 15-minute check-ins once every 3 days, rather than a 2-hour meeting or 1-hour meeting once a week or once every 2 weeks, because it keeps things fresh, and it keeps the way the brain works, and the way neuroscience works is, we do small things over a frequent period of time, or how relationships are done, or how our brain rewires. So, get out of these 1 or 2 hour meetings, get into these things. Hey, Simon, let's catch up every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:45. Let's just do a check-in. That would really help me. And then we can be on the same page. Cool, Mike, I can do 15 minutes, no problem. So those type of things for check-in. And culture, you got to define your culture. When we defining my culture was a huge step in my organization. And that went into the job ads I wrote. Once I got clear about my culture, my vision, and my purpose, that went into every job ad I wrote. That went into every conversation with a prospective employee, into every job interview. That went into who we pick. That went into how they get compensated. That went into how we do our employee reviews. That went into every time we had any meeting, we started off with something with culture. And that was in person or virtually. So if you want to have a strong culture, you got to get clear about what that culture is. And then it should be in your DNA. And again, great companies do that. And companies that didn't do that could sort of slide by with that before. But now that we're virtual, it's like, that's what I mean. You got to bring your A game, and you got to like really look at everything you do. But when you do, it's amazing, because people talk about accountability and motivation. When you have your culture rocking and rolling, that takes care of itself. People hold themselves accountable because they believe so much in the organization.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I want to have one final question, and it's really just your thoughts on this, and then we literally have sort of 2 or 3 minutes. What would you say to this? The world of work, well, let's look at it this way. Most leadership positions in South Africa, and I think in many countries, are held by men. Okay, that's a fact in most countries, including our own. In our industry particularly, the world of work was designed by men for men. We don't have to go and have babies. We don't often have the family responsibilities on our shoulders. So when the pandemic came along and the subsequent lockdowns and the work from home, some people call this the great equalizer, because now nobody's really prejudiced by this thing where you've got to kind of get in your car and go to another place and ask for time off. And I think that a lot of the voices that are saying the work from home works for us might be coming from people that are going, look, I didn't feel that I was in a workplace that kind of embraced who I was before. And now it does. So I mean, what do you say to that? Are you seeing that kind of conversation happening around us, and people going, we mustn't lose the ground we've gained as we move through this?
Yeah, that's we could have a whole day on that, Simon. And you're exactly right. And I even catch myself, if people are really astute, even sometimes I gave examples. I said he instead of she, and I corrected myself through this presentation. So I have subconscious bias, and I'm really working hard to get over. And women have it difficult because of, and you can talk about this on the gender, on the race level, and all different levels. and it's good we're having these conversations. Unfortunately, yes, it has leveled the playing field somewhat, but also people that oftentimes, for example, now that, if the schools aren't open, often that burden goes to the woman instead of the man. Oftentimes, people that may not that might not have as much money are hurt for work from home because they don't have the internet, or they might not have a laptop. So we're seeing this socioeconomically, we're seeing this on the gender. There's not a lot of good, easy fixes for this, especially, from South Africa. And I think we really got to be aware as leaders. And again, to me, great leadership takes true honesty with yourself about what you can do about these issues. And I've really caught myself looking at my subconscious biases and really saying, I want to be a leader that empowers everybody. And so that I've made some choices around what I do and different groups that I help, because I'm, to be honest, being born an American and in the place that I was, and given the advantages that I had where I grew up and how I grew up and how I was born, a lot of people don't have that. And so as leaders, to make this place a better place, we really have to do everything we can. I know that might sound a little bit broad, but that's really what I believe. And that's what I do personally. And I just encourage everybody out there just to really, really look deeper within themselves and see their behaviors, their actions, what they say, and how they can be the best leader they can, which takes courage.
R. Michael Anderson. What does the R stand for?
That stands for Robert, and that because really quickly, I'll tell you one really quick story. I was speaking in New Orleans, and I went by Michael Anderson, and as I was registering, the guy goes, "Are you Michael Anderson?" I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "Are you a serial killer?" I'm like, "I don't think so. Why do you ask that?" And he goes, well, I Googled, he was joking. He's like, "I Googled Michael Anderson and you're a serial killer in New Orleans, I guess." And so I thought I was pretty, hot stuff at that time. So I went home and I anonymously Googled myself, and Michael and Anderson are the most common first name and last name the year I was born. So there's a ton of Michael Anderson. So my first name is Robert. Okay. So I add the R in front of that, R. Michael Anderson. So I'm Googleable. But but one last thing, Simon, because I did work with you and your organization. I do have a high performing virtual team online course, and I'm giving everybody half off until
thank you.
Yeah, noon tomorrow, UK time. So if anybody out there really is saying, "Hey, I want to be the best leader I can for my organization. I want to learn how to run virtual meetings. I want to learn how to get this culture thing. I want to learn it to the next step." It's only $247. It's over half off of what I normally do it for. There's 5 modules that go through, again, accountability, virtual meetings, etc. I just wanted to put it out there for everybody. I also have an online group. You'll get invited to it after you buy the book, that I answer questions there directly. So if you want direct access to me, that's a great way to do it. So, and again, Simon, thanks for having me on here. Again, my last thing is, look, as leaders, we have to deal with so much pressure. And it's almost unfair because we're getting all these different ways, and oftentimes there's no one there to support us. And if my goal is anything, is to be a bit of support for leaders, to say, "Hey, look, it's difficult. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to get things wrong. Have some of that compassion for yourself, because look how much good that you do." Sometimes we focus on all the problems, the things we didn't do perfectly, but I can almost guarantee that everybody on this call does so much for their customers and their employees, and to just give themselves a little bit of a break, especially over these last 13 months, and just to make things a little easier on your own internal life.
That was brilliant. Michael, it's been great chatting to you. I wish I could give you a virtual high five. Yeah, we can do that. So yeah, all the best, and thank you. And I'm sure we'll be chatting soon. I definitely have some things we'd like to try here in South Africa. So I appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you. And please, if you want to do yourself a favor, if you're watching this, get Leading in the Next Normal. It's a brilliant book. It's only $7, I think. And it's really worth making that investment. So thank you, Michael. And yeah, over to you, Nonnie.